What is up, everybody? Dan the Fireman here. Today we're going to be going over this motorcycle cruiser accident that happened in a curve. We're going to be talking a lot about body positioning, line selection, and why taking an advanced class as a cruiser motorcycle rider is even more important than sport bike riders. And I'm going to explain a little bit why I believe that. So let's go ahead and watch this incident and figure out what happened, and therefore we don't do it ourselves, or at least we minimize the risk for ourselves. Let's just do it. Let's just go. Let's just go.
Oh.
So now that you saw what happened, what we're going to be doing is going from line position to body positioning, and then why I believe taking the advanced course is very important for cruiser riders. So right away, I want to talk about line positioning and why we need to practice. So we're crossing a double yellow right here, and now this could just be, the intent of I'm going to have some fun. I can cut across. I have good vision. You can see on the top left of the screen, that's the vision from the rider up front. And he could just be saying, I'm going to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to do this. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. What I would want to do, what I typically do is that even though I could do it, I'm not going to, because then you start instilling some bad habits into your riding. And that's not something I want to do. Now, I get it. There's a point of where you're just going to have fun versus we're training. But for me personally, I don't ride enough to the point where I feel like I could take, some of these shortcuts through the roads and everything. So if I was riding all the time, maybe this would be something where I can take a little bit off the edge, not have to train all the time. But for me personally, I like to train every single movement, every single corner, every single intersection, and really practice and instill more and more good habits. That way I don't have to think about them in an emergency or something. So keep that in mind. Let's be aware that, every single thing we do does start to develop a habit. So let's not do this all the time. Just do it every so often. But that's kind of what I want to talk about right there. Good line position would be typically middle, or outside, inside, outside, or outside, middle, outside, or something of that nature. The main thing is you really want to get a good line position for a good line of sight. You want to be able to see. And in this situation, you can see at all points. So I kind of get what they're trying to do. But if you try to do that on a mountain curve, it's not going to be a good thing, especially for blind turns. So let's go ahead and scroll back just a little bit right here. And what we have is typically a complete right-handed turn. You can kind of tell because we talk about sides of vehicles all the time when it comes to T intersections or cross intersections or anybody wanting to come out. It's typically that 90 degrees. Now, if you really want to, sides of the buildings, you can look over here, those two buildings right there, those completely sides of the buildings. So that's going to be a 90-degree turn. So that might help you when it comes to the turning stuff if you have that vision. Typically, you don't. You have a lot of trees or you have a mountain there, so you can't really see that. But if you're out in an area like this where there's a lot of farmlands, flatlands, sides of the buildings are going to be a good clue. But outside of that, it won't be super reliable. You might want to just keep focus on the chevrons and then the signage on that part. But that little tidbit there. So we're coming up to this part, and we're going to talk a little bit more about body positioning. So you want to do slow leg press and roll. You see the brake lights. That's very good. We got slowing down portion done. And you want to look through the turn, which you can see on the top left of the screen. He's actually looking through it. Then you also want to press and then roll on the throttle. So when it comes to pressing, that's the counter steering. Okay, you're pressing to do counter steering. Well, it's only half the equation. You wanted to press to initiate counter steering, but then you also want to get into a decent body positioning. I'm not talking knee drag or elbow drag or anything like that. What I'm talking about is just a little bit, especially for this turn, and it's all about the speed also. So we're going to get into this. We're going to press. We're getting a little too fast in the turn. Maybe it's not banked right, but we're pressing. And then as soon as right there, we grab a little bit of the ground. Okay, when we grab a little of the ground, it's because we turned the bike down farther and farther. What we typically see on sport bike riders is that you're pressing. All of a sudden, you just barely tap the peg and then you lose traction. It's not because the peg is causing you to lose traction. It's that on sport bikes, it takes a lot of lean angle to even touch your foot or the peg. So when you're pressing, you pretty much put your tires to the last limit, and then it starts to lose traction and then causes a low side or a high side depending on the type of loss. But right here on cruisers, what we typically have is going to have floorboards, pegs, hard saddlebags, soft saddlebags, exhausts, basically hard parts, okay? Hard parts, when they touch the ground, they're gonna slide and skid, and they might actually grab traction. They might actually grab the ground and cause you to leverage your tire off the ground, which is gonna lose all manner of control. So that's gonna be a big problem. Also, if your pegs and floorboards are easily scratched and you're getting towards the edge of those parts and your foot is kind of hanging off, or if your feet are kind of near it, that can also grab traction. Now, our shoes on the bottom are pretty dang, they're meant to not slip, so they have traction. So you see how his foot just kind of gets launched out? That is going to be because the ground grabbed his foot. Now, metal is just going to slide across the ground. So that's going to be what's happening there. But how do we prevent ourselves from ever getting to that position? Well, we need to practice good body positioning, okay? So this is why I talked about body position, but then also why cruisers should really think about taking an advanced riding clinic or advanced riding course. In those advanced classes, you're going to learn more about body positioning. It doesn't matter which organization you go to. Typically, the advanced areas is going to have more high-speed training, more high-speed tools, and anything over 20 miles per hour is considered high speed. So this is a high-speed area. You learn how to do counterbalancing, and you learn how to do body positioning for that counterbalancing in a parking lot in the beginner classes, and that is going to set you up for when you take an advanced class that you kind of understand that you can get off the bike a little bit and it'll stay upright, but at higher speeds, you don't want to practice that. So that's why you practice that in the beginning class. In the advanced class, you're going to already have that understanding so that when you apply the counterweight with counterbalance, it's not going to be a foreign concept to you. So that's why I say take your beginner class, then take your advanced class. So anyways, back to this, cruisers are going to have a better benefit when it comes to these advanced classes with body positioning, because what's going to happen with the cruisers, like I mentioned, hard parts are going to scrape. So how do we prevent hard parts scraping? Well, keeping the bike more upright and straight, kind of like how it wants to be. But we still have to make these turns. So you're going to be doing more body positioning with a little bit of counter steering. You're not doing a ton of counter steering and scraping pegs or scraping hard parts. Now we're doing moderate counter steering with moderate body positioning, so nothing scraping on the ground, and we're still able to make that turn. That right there is going to prevent something like this, okay? I'm not saying we're slamming the bike down in this footage or in this video right here. What I'm saying is that cruisers don't have a lot of room for that lean angle like sport bikes do. So we have to, and when I say we, I had to do it on my Sportster. We have to, because we're going to be scraping and causing a lot of problems. So this is why it's such a huge benefit to take these classes, because we need to take those classes because our bikes are not designed for something like this. And I know we all want to ride like this. So make sure you go out and take a class. Make sure you get this education so you can utilize this tool even on a cruiser, not just sport bikes. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and recap this video. The main thing I want you to focus on is that whenever you go out riding, that is practice, okay? It's practice for the eventual, whoops, a car pulled out in front of me or gravel's on the road. You need to practice, 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 okay? Have some fun, but practice. The second is, if you are a cruiser rider, go out and take an advanced class, because you do not want to be scraping parts. You do not want to be having problems like this, and you want to be able to handle any situation that comes up ahead. Plus, you'll learn trail braking, which could help in this situation too. Last but not least, I know it's not even a tip here, but go ahead and click that subscribe button up the top right of your screen. Let's see if we can get to 250,000 subscribers by the end of the year. That's a huge goal for me. We're already at 205. By the way, thank you so much. We hit that 200,000 last week. Super stoked, super happy about that. Anyways, I'll see you guys around. See you on the live stream, and hope you guys ride safe.